Hey, are you looking for some woodworking project ideas where you can sell them to make some extra money? I'm going to show you 3 of those. So stay tuned for all of the different projects. The one at the end of the video is super cool. Don't forget to let me know what you think about these projects down in the comments below. And if you like these projects, don't forget to like the video and share it with other people so that way they can build these things too. Okay, so project number 1 is actually a project that I made for my son. So I don't know if this is the same with you, but if you've got kids and those kids are going to start making their own breakfast, toast and bagels and that sort of stuff, one thing I come across with my kids is neither one of them wants to take the toast or the bagels out of the toaster because they're too hot. So that being said, I thought to myself, how can I get them to do this so that way I don't have to do it for them every single time? I mean, it's toast. And that's where I thought about making a set of toaster tongs. Super simple. These are about 7 inches long and 1/8 of an inch wide on either side. So there's not a lot to them. Right here, we've got this block of cherry wood. This block of cherry wood is cut at a little bit of an angle, which allows these pieces to branch out like this. Okay. Now this is only about 1 inch tall. I didn't want to make these things too big. So this block is about an inch tall. And what I did is I measured to get an angle. This is about an 80 degree angle, give or take. I measured the distance here, and then the distance here is short from this side by 1/8 of an inch, a 16th on each side, which is how I calculated this angle. So all I did after that is I took these and I sanded them down on this side here just to make it nice and smooth. I put some glue in here, clamped this together after I had these blades sanded down. And then once I had this clamped in, I let the glue dry for a little bit. And with the glue dry, I then took a drill, drilled 1/8 of an inch hole all the way through, took a piece of doweling. And when you're using doweling for something like this, what I like to do is take that dowel and on the tip of it, kind of spin it on a sander a little bit. So that way it comes to a little bit more of a point. It makes it easier and less blunt to drive into this hole. So I put a tiny dab of glue in this hole, and then I put that end in and I just tapped it in. And then after I did that, just used a cutoff saw and cut that piece off. Once I was finished that, then I took this, now that it was all done, I sanded a little bit of an edge on it, so it's got a tiny bit of a taper here and here. This thing is not sharp by any means. And then after I did that, I treated this with a linseed oil just because it's food safe. And that was it. This project was super simple. Now, I've seen some of these on Etsy selling for about $10, $15. Honestly, this took me maybe 20 minutes to make. You know what the cool part about this is, though? If you like Marvel stuff, you can actually design Wolverine claws like this too. So that's actually pretty cool. So super easy project, very kid friendly. And now my kids are going to get their own bread out of the toaster. Okay, so project number 2 is actually a project that might make your significant other a little bit happier. I know it did for mine. So I don't know about you, but I have a lot of hats laying around the house. And they're actually hung up, or they were hung up, I should say, on on some hooks that were in our front closet. And even though I have so many hats, it's almost like I collect them, which I'm sure a lot of you do too. So even though I've got a lot of them, I only actually wear like 3, maybe 4 of them at a time. And so in talking to my wife, I said to her, what if I make a nice shelf to put them on? Can I put them on the wall outside the closet? So that way they're right there. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. And so I said, perfect. So I went online, I found a bunch of these. You've probably seen them before. And that is this here, which is a hat holder. This thing is so simple to build. Now, this one here in particular, I had some chunks of this, I think it was an old maple countertop or something like that laying around, and had some unique laminations in it. So I thought to myself, because I have this, why not use this piece of wood here? That is exactly what I did. Now, let's look at the construction of this thing. Okay, this I had cut out with a 1 3/8 Forstner bit. Now, this is This is some pretty thick maple. It's about I believe it was about 1.5 inches thick. So it's going to take a little bit of work for that Forstner bit to go through here. You can't force it all the way through. You're going to burn it. And I will tell you, this is going to be very, very difficult to sand on that inside groove. So you don't want to be doing that. So in any case, so I marked these out, and you can put your holes at whichever center you want. I believe I went about a 3 to 4 inch center on these holes. It's entirely up to you. Most of these coat racks, it's not a coat rack. Most of these hat racks have a thicker gap in between, but I wanted something that was going to hang on the wall, but it wasn't going to take up a huge amount of space and can hold my 4 main hats, and then my son puts his on here also. So 1 3/8 here, just over 1 inch opening, and you'll notice that the opening was very, very simple to cut. This is on a 45-degree angle, both of these cuts. And so you drill your hole here first. Once you've got your hole, your 1 3/8 hole drilled with the Forstner bit, you then just bring along your square, combination square, whatever it is, set it at a 45-degree angle, and then you just draw the line here and here. And then after you draw those lines, for me, I took this over to my bandsaw, and then I finished it up by doing a lot of hand sanding to try and smooth it on the inside. And that was it. So 45-degree angle is important for these. 1 3/8 hole right here. Cut these as straight line as you possibly can on a bandsaw, regular saw, whatever you want to use. It's entirely up to you. And then for hanging this, what I opted to do was I actually put a keyhole in the back here with my router. I was originally going to try and hang this with 2-sided tape, but because of this being such a thick piece of maple and the weight of all the hats on it, I didn't think that it was going to stay on the wall at all. So I put a keyhole in it. That way I could put the screw nice and tight to the wall, and this thing holds super solid. So it's an awesome project if you wanted to build something like this. Now, I've seen these online going for various prices. For one like this, if you're looking to make some money on a project like this, and you can obviously vary the design and the material, entirely up to you. But I would probably list this one if I was going to sell it for around maybe $40, maybe just over $40. Depends on your area and if people have a lot of hats. But if you're going to make bigger ones, obviously you could vary the price even further than that. But they are super cool. And if you haven't seen one of these used before, this is what you do. You tuck your hat in like that, and you put the knob in, and that's it. And then it holds it. So super cool project. Keep your hat nice and organized. So build this with the scraps that you've got in your shop. It's entirely up to you. Just make sure your dimensions are the same. You'll notice that this one here is actually thicker than this one here. I did that initially. I did this spacing here, and then I thought I wasn't going to have enough space going all the way down, so I ended up tightening them up. If I'm selling this project, these dimensions are all going to be identical thicknesses. So keep that in mind, but a super easy project, and you can finish this with whatever you want. You can paint it. You can put a clear Varathane on it. You can put an oil coating on it, which is what I did with this. But super easy. Highly suggest making one of these. Hey, if you haven't already, hit that like button down below and share the video to everybody else. Your support helps this channel keep going and keep doing more projects and bringing you all kinds of different cool and unique build ideas and other videos. Okay, so the last project idea that I've got for you is actually one that I just made. And this one here, I saw this on Etsy and through Pinterest and whatnot as I was going through looking for some different project ideas, and I happened to find this thing here. Now, it wasn't this exactly, because I wanted to put a bit of my own spin on it and actually make it work for what I've got in my house. So this is a plant holder, plant stand, or really a shelf for whatever you want. It's entirely up to you. This one in particular is made of cherry and finished with oil. Now, this was one piece of cherry that I had lying around that was the width of this. So it was about 6 inches wide. And then I cut all of these pieces off of it, the angles and everything, and actually still had a chunk of this left. With this project, this is actually easier than the hat holder, believe it or not. I'm not going to say quite as easy as the first project you saw, but still pretty cool. The shelf, as far as overall dimensions, we're about 13 inches in height, 13 and a quarter, give or take. And when we look at the overall width, we're sitting somewhere around 16 and a half inches. And then, of course, we're 6 inches wide here. And then we've got these shelves. Now, these shelves, you can do these shelves at different sizes. The ones I've got here are 4 inches by 5 inches, and that's 1, 2, 3. They're all the same. The angles on this are super easy. All of these angles are cut at 30 degrees. I shouldn't be pointing at this one here. The cut is here, 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 and then, of course, underneath each of these shelves. Other than that, it's a straight piece of wood cut at 30 degrees. Now, as far as securing these in place for holding weight, it's actually really easy to do. So the first thing that I did was found my center of the 6 inches right here. Once I found my center, I took that, so it was 3 inches, and I drew a line right down the center. So if we look at the bottom, I drew the line down here because I used a countersink and drilled 2 holes and 2 holes. So that way, these pieces here would be screwed into the base in addition to being glued. Now, after I did that, the other thing I had to do was secure this shelf here. So what I opted to do for this, and I didn't fill these, I left them out so that way I could actually show you, is I used a couple of pocket holes to go into this piece. These pieces are 3/4 of an inch thick, so it was super easy to set up my pocket hole jig. And so I did a couple pocket holes, and I used a fine thread screw for this because this is cherry. It's a hardwood, so it's got a bit of a tighter grain. You don't want a coarse thread, you want a fine thread for it. So I did that with 1.25 inch screws going in, just as Craig recommends for their pocket hole system. And so I did the pocket holes in there, and then, of course, I've got glue at this seam, I've got glue at this seam, and glue along the bottom as well, so that way it's going to hold it in place. On the top here, this was very simple as well. So again, I found center of this piece, okay, because this is 4 inches wide. Obviously, our 2 inches is center. As soon as I found center, what I did is I put a little tick here, and on the back side, I put a little tick there also. What that allowed me to do was line it up with the center of this board. Now, once I had it lined up with the center, I held this piece on there, and I secured these shelves here, each with 1 screw. And that's it, just to hold it in place. Okay, once I had that screw in, I got everything lined up, made sure it was good. I backed the screw off, and then I put some glue underneath each one of these. Now, one of the things that I didn't do with this project is any fancy chamfers or whatnot on the edges, because this project is bare bones. So to give you an idea of how this was built, I used a miter gauge on my table saw, and I used a pocket hole jig, and I used an orbital sander. That's the only tools that I used for this whole project because I wanted to make sure I could build it with very minimal tools, and it worked really, really well. So when I finished this, I finished this with just that linseed oil finish. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know how much I love using the tried and true oil finish. So entirely up to you, but for me, it works really good. Put it on, wait for an hour, wipe it off, and buff it up a little bit, and it comes out, as you can see, nice and shiny with a really nice finish. So this piece here took me, outside of the finish time of an hour, this took me about 45 minutes to get everything cut, drilled, screwed, glued, and put together. It really didn't take me that much time. Now, let's think about what these are retailing for. So I've seen some that are similar to this on Etsy. I saw one was about 27 bucks. I probably wouldn't purchase it because personally, I think this is worth a lot more than $27. But I saw some other ones, other shelves like this, that were going for over 100 bucks. And so you could make some good money on this because you've got style and, of course, depending on the wood that you're going to be using. But it definitely looks sharp, and you can set it on mantle or whatnot in a house, and it's going to be super cool looking. As you can see, like I can put a mason jar on here, but you can put a lot of weight on this thing, and it actually holds up really well, especially with the glue dry. So a super cool project, easy to build, and you can just use, all you need is piece that's 6 inches long and 6 inches wide and about 4 feet long, and you're still going to have some leftovers, and that's going to make this entire project. I highly suggest you try building one of these. It will sell like crazy. Thanks so much for joining me in the shop for these 3 projects. I hope you enjoyed them. They're super cool, easy to make. You can use scraps that you've got left over in your shop, and you can sell these things for a huge profit too. Or you can play with them like pretending you're Wolverine. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I hope you enjoyed these. And you can also visit the website. It's timber-designs.ca, and there's a whole bunch of photos of projects posted on there too that you can check out.